Welcome back to 50 Days with Jesus, the Bible study on Sunday mornings here at Dayton Christian Church. Glad to be with you all this morning. And I need to start this lesson by apologizing. Last week, have you heard of people that overshare? They just share too much. Last week, I overtaught. I kept going and going and going. And so last week, you heard me read some of what we're actually going to cover this week. I went too far in the Sermon on the Mount, which is what we're walking through these 50 days with Jesus. This is week 3, so we're in portion number 3 of the Sermon on the Mount, which I have titled Generous. Last week we talked about boundaries, and so we heard Jesus elaborate on God's law from the first 5 books of the Bible. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, "You shall not murder." And Jesus went on to say, "I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister, or who calls them a name or calls them a fool, will be in danger." So, in other words, do not hate somebody. Jesus took, "You shall not commit adultery," and extended that to even if you look at a woman lustfully, that you've already done that. And then on the topic of divorce, Jesus extended, well, if you need to get a divorce, just hand them a written paper. Don't take divorce so casually, and cherish your marriage, cherish your spouse. So Jesus set these boundaries and extended what God had already said, so that we're not just living by the letter of the law, but by the spirit of the law. Now we get into the generous statements. And so we're going to pick up with a statement from, again, the Old Testament, first 5 books, here in Matthew chapter 5, verse 33. "Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, 'Do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made.' But I am telling you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one." So I'm calling this lesson generous, and how is this any picture of generosity? And so I decided, to help fit with the theme, that Jesus is telling us to be generous with keeping our word. Just keep your word. When he talks about making an oath, fulfilling to the Lord vows that you have made, sometimes we take an oath, we say, "Oh no, I didn't do that, I promise, I swear," and we know we're lying, right? Okay. Or when someone says that, you might be suspicious that they're lying. But that's talking about something that's already happened in the past. Jesus is saying, when you're making an oath, a vow, a promise to do something, will you come over and help me next week? And if you say, "Oh yeah, I'll be there," then be there. That's all Jesus is saying. You don't have to say, "Oh, I promise, I swear on heaven or on earth and on the altar and on Jerusalem and on the temple." You don't have to go that far. Just keep your word, which is a lot to say for some of us these days, And when we look around, and it's primary season, it's election time again, and we're looking at people and we're saying, but are they going to keep their word, right? And again, Jesus is not telling us to go around and judge other people and see if they're going to keep their word. He's telling us to each make sure you and I are each keeping our own word. So when you make a promise that you're going to do something, just do it. Say yes or no. And just a reminder to those of you who are so giving, who feel like you're obligated to be there for everybody. Like if anybody asks you to do anything, you feel like you have to say yes. And now you find yourself this deep in promises that you've made to people, and you can't possibly fulfill them all. I'm going to give you permission right now, first of all, to go back to some of those people and say, "You know what? I really want to help you out. I want to do this for you, but I can't. I've got to be realistic about what I'm capable of doing. So I'm sorry. I really am sorry. I hope I get to be there for you next time, but I need to ask your forgiveness and let me go from this." And you know what most of those people are going to say? They're going to say, "It means so much to me that you actually cared enough that you offered, that you were willing to do that. And I totally get it. My schedule's busy too. So no, that's okay. You've got a situation, you take care of that, Most people will be understanding of that. And I also want to give you permission to say no. That's what Jesus just said. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. There tends to be this, again, if you're the kind of person that feels like you're obligated to always say yes whenever anybody asks you to do something, it's okay to say no. It's all right to say, realistically speaking, I don't think I can keep that promise, so I'm going to say no. And be realistic with your own time and energy and everything. Now that kind of goes against where I'm going with this whole lesson, where I feel like Jesus is going, because he's telling us to be generous, but be generous in a realistic way. Don't be over generous because you're writing checks you can't you can't pay, right? So tell people, be honest with yourself and with them when they ask you for a favor or when you want to do something for someone. If you can really do that, great, say yes. But if you know you can't do that, be honest, be realistic. Most people are understanding. And the most important thing is God is always understanding. And he will be going there approving of your decision to say no, because realistically you know that you can't do that. Then Jesus starts getting a little more challenging with us. As he goes on to verse 38, you have heard that it was said eye for eye and tooth for tooth. Now that really is in the Old Testament. And it was in particular, it was about if you have a servant and someone else's servant is working and accidentally injures your servant, or someone else's cart gets out of control and runs over your servant or something. Your servant gets injured by someone else or their servant or their animals or whatever. Well, then you get to have an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And extend it all the way down to the animals. And we're like, I know we live in an agricultural area here in Dayton, but we don't use animals to pull our farm equipment or to get us around town or anything like that. And we probably don't have a lot of servants. In fact, I don't know a single person that actually has servants, like paid servants. But what we do have is employees. We do have daily workers out in the fields and at our various jobs, offices filled with employees, right? And the idea is if someone injures one of your employees or someone injures any piece of equipment that you use, that you get to then require of them the same thing. Let's say, you're a farmer and somebody blows out a tire on your tractor. Well, that's your only tractor, and that's the only way you're going to get your fields ready. It's springtime. You got to get some planting done, right? You get to go to that farmer and say, well, you got to give me a good tire off your tractor so I can fix mine, okay? And we might go, well, that's great for farmers, okay, right? Let's say you're an fender bender, right? Middle of town, right? Oh yeah, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, fender for a fender, okay? You get to require of them, you've got insurance, right? You better have insurance because I need payment for the fender and for the labor and for all this other stuff, right? And it kind of by extension, when we hear eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth with the Israelites there with Moses, back there 1,500 years before Jesus, how has that developed today? Lawsuits, basically. Anything you would sue somebody over, okay? But even it can get pretty personal, I've in my life gone around with a grudge because someone was unkind to me or did something cruel to me or even just treated me in a way that I felt like, I felt offended, And some people these days, it seems like our society more and more talks about even if somebody just offends you a little bit, you're allowed to make a big stink about it. You're allowed to get on the internet and get everybody on your side, right? And everybody, oh yeah, they deserve, oh, that was a terrible thing they did to you, right? And so people figured, even in Jesus' time, that was okay. That if somebody wrongs you a little bit, well, then you at least get to wrong them back. You at least get to require of them what they took from you. And Jesus goes on in verse 39 and says, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Whew. Now again, Jesus is not necessarily saying this applies cut and dried in every situation, but he is saying we need to have this kind of attitude, this kind of approach toward people. And like I said last week, I have no problem going the extra mile, giving the shirt off my back, and turning the other cheek to people who are nice to me. If they're kind to me, I can be kind to them, no problem. But Jesus says these are evil people. These are people who are being mean to you. These are the kind of people where you're saying, hey, you took out my eye, I get to take out yours, right? You knocked out my tooth, I get to knock out yours. This idea of what's fair, what is just. And all through human history, we have had this tendency to say, but that's not fair. I want what's right. I want what's just. I want to go to court. I want what I deserve. I ask you, where do we get this idea of justice? Where do we get the idea of what's fair? Who do we go to find out what's really just, what's really fair? Well, we go to the one who invented justice. We go to God. It's God who gave us these commands, this law that's in the first book of the Bible anyway. And so we go to God and we say, God, it's not fair. And God could respond to us, you know what else isn't fair? You, every one of you, human beings, has turned your back on me at some point. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And God could look at us and say, no, okay, I'm going to give you what's fair. You're all gone. And yet, even from the beginning of the Bible, we find that that's not how God operates. He doesn't just do what's just. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit. God was supposed to put them to death, but he didn't. He didn't do what was right, what was fair. All humanity turning away from God. God says, well, I'm going to rescue Noah and his family anyway. 8 people get to survive on the ark. Only 8 people. And he restarts the human race. Why didn't he just wipe them all out? God bringing the Israelites through the desert, and Moses saying, God, they have turned their back on you. And God saying, I am so done with these people. I'm just going to wipe them out. I'm going to go pick another group of people, another family group, another nation to start with, and they can be my people. And Moses says, but God, you're not just the God of justice, you're the God of mercy too. You're the God of mercy. You can't do that. Besides, what will everybody say about you if you give up on these people? They'll say that you were the reason they couldn't make it. God is not just the God of justice. He's the God of mercy. And we see right here the one person who's speaking these words, turn the other cheek, who tells us to go the extra mile. The one who said, give them the shirt off your back, is the one who would go to the cross for every one of us. If it was fair, Jesus wouldn't have to do that. But he chose to do that. The Son of God goes to the cross for every one of us, not out of justice, but out of mercy. To fulfill the justice, yes, but also out of mercy. He didn't have to, but there was no other way to rescue us from our sin. And so Jesus is certainly qualified to tell us, you know, when someone offends you, when someone's mean to you, when someone maybe not physically strikes you on the cheek, but they say something that's just like, oh, that was like a slap in the face, right? You know what I'm talking about because you've seen this happen. You've been watching TV or you're scrolling through your social feed, and you see wow, that was offensive. What a slap in the face. Oh, my goodness. Right? How should you respond? Instead of insisting on justice, instead of insisting that you get to slap them back, turn the other cheek. And again, it's Jesus who's telling us to do this. Now, he says, do not resist an evil person. He's not saying do not resist evil in the world. We need to speak up when there's evil happening. And there are a lot of great movements, great things going on to help counteract evil in the world. But it's not just enough for us as Christians to speak up about it. We have to be part of the solution, right? Yeah, it's helpful to point out the problem, but we have to be part of the solution. One of the things that our church is doing right now is we have empty baby bottles that are to be filled with change as donations for our local pregnancy care center. Women who are in crisis pregnancy, who don't know where to turn, instead of being just pointing out the problem, well, they shouldn't just be offered free abortions. I agree. But what's the solution then? Our pregnancy care center is part of that solution. That they are there to counsel those women and to offer them hope and to offer them a new way of looking at their situation and the support and the supplies and everything to help them get through the full term of pregnancy and into their new role as a mother, and maybe even help bring that family together so that they can together raise that child. And we're proud as a church to be supporting that, to be part of the solution. When we see evil, it's not enough to just point out the evil. We need to be part of the solution. And so Jesus goes on to say, verse 43, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Now, I just want to point out again, love your neighbor. Those words are in the Old Testament. Hate your enemy isn't really explicitly stated there. Okay. It's up to God to dole out the justice. In fact, so many times in Israel's history leading up to Jesus, so many times when the enemy came and attacked, God was the one who rescued. I mean, how did Gideon fight off an innumerable army with just 300 people? God was acting in there. God told him how to do it. God did some miracles there. And over and over throughout Israel's history, God takes care of the justice side. We need to work on the mercy. And I'd even say a step beyond mercy, something called kindness. And I love seeing kindness in the world. I follow on my Facebook and Instagram, I follow groups like Good News Stories and Kindness Movement and things like this. The stories about people just being kind. And I know that for every video that I see of someone being kind to one other person, that there are 100 other people that weren't caught on video equally being kind. And it's just great to have that reminder that, humanity really does know how to be kind. And we see kindness all around us. It surprises us sometimes where we see kindness. We see people with labels or from groups that we thought weren't very kind. Well, I didn't expect that person to be kind. Why? Well, because they're from that ethnic background, or they're from that culture, they're from that group, they're from the opposing political party, they're from, fill in the blank, right? And they know how to be kind too. We really shouldn't be so surprised at that, because kindness comes from God, and God created every single human being on the planet. So kindness is really wired into who we are. And so what I'm saying is, while being kind does not mean that you are rescued from your sin, but it's along the right line. At least you're starting to get the idea of how we should be treating each other. And so Jesus is telling us to be generous with our kindness. Again, God's law says, love your neighbor. And then God's people came up with the idea, well, yeah, love your neighbor, but I've got enemies. Do I have to love them too? There are two words for love in the Bible, especially in the New Testament. One word is really for friendship kind of love. In other words, you like this person. You get along with them, you're buddies, right? You go do stuff together, right? Watch the big game together, help each other, with big projects and whatever. You have hobbies together, whatever. You like each other. You can appreciate each other. You get along. You like each other. You're friends. And that kind of friendship is mentioned over and over in the Bible, in the New Testament. But never with God. God isn't asking us to be his friend. When Jesus was asked, what's the most important command? He didn't reply, be friends with God. Be buddy-buddy with God. Because God knows that sometimes what he tells us to do, we're not going to like. And this is one of those things, I think. I think when Jesus said, God did say love your neighbor, and you've heard hate your enemy. But I tell you, oh dear, what's Jesus about to tell us? You probably guessed. Or if you were listening last week, you already heard it. Love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. What kind of love is God talking about here? He's not talking about friendship. You don't have to like your neighbors, and you don't have to like your enemies. You don't have to be their best friends and best buds forever. Here's a friendship bracelet. All right, let's get matching coats, for our favorite sports teams or whatever. No, you don't have to do that. Because the word for love used here, and every time God tells us to love, and every time God's love is described, is the word agape, and it means unconditional love. I care about you no matter what. God says we need to care about our enemies. We need to care about them as human beings. We need to care about them as fellow human beings, and since all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, how are they going to be rescued if they don't have Jesus Christ? Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and he sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Just look at how God treats these people that you call your enemies. He gives them the sun. He gives them the rain. The righteous and the unrighteous, that could also be the just and the unjust. So if you're all about justice, well, even the unjust people, even the people, the lawbreakers, and I don't just mean human laws, I mean God's laws too. God still gives them sunshine. God still gives them rain. So if God treats them that way, that's all God's saying for us too. Care. Care about the same basic human needs, and our most vital human need, as Jesus keeps reminding us, is to be freed from sin and to be in God's family. We need to be that. We need God to rescue us. We need to be rescued by Jesus Christ. We all need that. So pray for those who persecute you. Verse 46, if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? Wow, ouch, tax collectors. Did you know Jesus, one of his 12 apostles, was a tax collector? Yeah. But that was a group of people, again, a group of people that most of society said, oh, they're bad. They're our enemies. And just so you understand, tax collectors were employed by the Roman government. That's right, they didn't get to elect, the Jews didn't elect their own government. The Roman government had come in 100 years earlier and said, we're in charge now. And the Jews had they couldn't argue with that. They even fought, and the Romans said, no, that match was over in 10 seconds. So the Romans had been in charge for 100 years. And they let you know it. Every street corner, there was a Roman soldier standing there, keeping the peace, making sure you citizens don't get out of line. And then tax collectors often they could be anybody. Some of them were Jews, obviously. Jesus called a tax collector to follow him. And so even Jews had the government job of tax collector. And you think our taxes are bad. Imagine getting to the tax collector, and he reads the sheet, and it says you owe $40, and he says, $50. I'm sorry, what? $50? You have no idea how much you owe anyway. Only the guy with the paper knows. And why is he charging you $10 extra? Well, so he has a little something in his pocket. Got to take his wife out to dinner later or something. I don't know. The tax collectors were getting wealthy off of their fellow Jews. And so they were piled right in there with all the other sinners. If you were looking for an enemy of the Jew, you said, who are the enemies around here? Well, those tax collectors, I'll tell you what. There's nothing good about them. Who would we say today in our society? Who would you say are the enemies? Or a group of people that there just can't be anything good about them? In this week's readings, you're going to hear a couple of things about Samaritans. Samaritans were only half Jews, half Israelites. They were Israelites that had married in with the foreigners that the enemy had brought in to repopulate the area. They had married in, and they weren't purebred Israelites anymore. And so these half-breed Israelites, the Samaritans, Jews did not look up to them. And today we have a phrase, good Samaritan. We say that all the time. Oh, what a good Samaritan. I don't think a lot of Jews would have said there was anything good about a Samaritan. And so when Jesus speaks with this woman in Samaria, in John chapter 4, she says, I can see you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews, see, the hatred went both ways. You Jews, all right? Obviously, we Samaritans are not included with you Jews. You Jews claim that this place where we must worship is in Jerusalem, a few miles that way, whole day's walk. And Jesus goes on to say, I'm telling you the truth. A day is coming. In fact, it's arrived when God wants people who will worship him in spirit and in truth. So as Jesus is teaching us to follow not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, he's also saying that we are to worship God in spirit and in truth. That's what really matters. And that people from all different walks of life and all different people groups can come to him if we continue to love the people around us with God's love, unconditional love, agape love. If we continue to say to everybody around us, I care about you. I care. I'm not going to try to be your best friend, but I still care about you because God cares about you. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Verse 47, and if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? The outsiders, the ungodly people, right? And when he said greet, that one little word greet, well, I say hi to my coworkers. What do you mean greet? They had a greeting then. The Jews had a greeting that they gave each other. Peace be with you. You may have heard the Jewish word, shalom. And it means so much more than just, may the countries stop fighting with each other. But peace with you, well-being. I wish for God's peace to be with you. If you're only going to say that to your friends, to the people you get along with, to the people that you're buddy-buddy with, well, everybody does that. Jesus is challenging us to offer peace, God's peace, to even people we would consider our enemies, even people who are from the wrong group of people, even that coworker that treats you the wrong way or always telling the dirty jokes, even that member of your family that's kind of the black sheep of the family and that everybody else is kind of pushed off to the side. Jesus is saying, greet them too. Offer them God's peace. And really act like it. Behave that way. And so in verse 48, he says, and this is the English translation, be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. As I explained last week, that can also be understood as be complete as your heavenly Father is complete. God isn't telling you that whenever anybody asks you for a favor that you've got to do it. No, let your yes be yes and your no be no. God isn't saying you have to be best friends with that person that's just driving you crazy. God is saying we have to care. We have to care about people the same way he cares about them. We can't just care about justice because justice by itself would wipe all of us off the map. We need to care about mercy too, about kindness, and about extending that kindness to people that otherwise, without Jesus, we wouldn't have imagined that I need to be kind to, that I need to care about. But because of Jesus and his example, and the fact that he came for every single one of us. I also like that part, something that one of Jesus' followers wrote. It's there in the Bible. When we were enemies of God, at just the right time, Jesus died for us. And it's because Jesus died for us and because we receive his salvation that we are no longer enemies of God. You used to be God's enemy, Christian. And so when you look at the people around you that you consider your enemies, just care. Just be kind. Just love them the way God loves you. Look forward to studying with you next week. We'll see you then.